Today we are going to focus on adding and subtracting radical expressions, and again our focus is really only on square roots and cube roots. And we'll get started first with a little bit of review of things that you already know that look the same when we're adding and subtracting radicals. So if we look at this page, this is stuff that you've done before in the past, right? So if it asks you to simplify, we could simplify. So 3x plus 5x, you could actually add those and that gives us 8x. So we're adding the coefficients, right? 5x plus 6x, you can't add those, they're not like terms, so that's simplified. Negative 3x plus 3, again, that's simplified, those are not like terms. So when we're adding, things have to look the same in order to put them together. And that's going to be exactly what it looks like with square roots today. The square roots have to be the same in order for us to actually add them together. Yesterday we did multiplication, which is, again, super similar to multiplying expressions. It doesn't matter what things look like with multiplication, you can always multiply things together. So 3x times 5x would be 15x squared. 5x times 6y is 30xy, and then negative 3x times 3 is negative 9x. So where when we were adding and subtracting, we couldn't combine, but when we're multiplying, we could. And so that's going to be the difference with radicals. So when we are multiplying radicals, it doesn't matter what they look like, we can actually multiply them together. But if we're adding and subtracting them, we can't combine them because they're not the same radical. So we'll get started. So this would be the same thing as having like 2x plus 6x, right? We would add those together and get 8x. So we're going to do the same thing. When we're adding or subtracting radicals, square roots, we are going to add or subtract just the coefficients, so that's going to give us 8, and then we leave the square root alone. So if I look at number 2, I'm going to add the coefficients, which are 4 and a 1 that we don't have to write, so that gives us 5 square root of 3. So number 3, again, I'm looking, they're exactly the same. They're both the square root of 2, so I can subtract my coefficients, and I'm just carrying the square root along. And then number 4, they're both the square root of b, so I'm actually able to subtract them. So negative 3 minus 7 gives me negative 10 square root of b. So just like when you're simplifying algebraic expressions, if they're the same, we just add or subtract coefficients. So here's some more problems. So I have the square root of 7, the square root of 7, the square root of 7. The one that doesn't have a coefficient has a coefficient of 1, so I'm just adding and subtracting coefficients. 2 plus 1 minus 8 gives us negative 5 square root of 7. When I'm looking at number 6, I have the square root of 3 and the square root of 6. Those are not like terms. Just like if I had 5x, this might be like a 6y. They're not the same. So this is actually simplified. That because the square roots are not the same, we cannot add them together. And then I'm looking at number 7. So my square roots are the same, or actually these are cube roots. My cube roots are the same, so I have I can subtract 11 minus 5 for 6 cube root of 7. And then I'm looking at 8. They're all the same. Cube roots are all 12, so I can simplify negative 5 plus 6 minus 18 is going to give me negative 17 cube root of 12. So I am going to add one more. We're going to do the square root of 24 plus the square root of 54. So when I'm looking at these, I'm like, those are definitely not the same. I can't add them together. But if we really look at those, you should realize that 24 and 54 are not in simplest form like we did last week. So we have to simplify those first. And this is where the addition and subtraction ones get a little bit longer because sometimes you do have to simplify. So 24 is 4 times 6, which is 2 times 2 times 6. So that's going to give me 2 square root of 6. 54 is 9 times 6, which is 3 times 3 times 6, which gives me 3 square root of 6. So now what I'm looking at, now that they're in simplest form, I can actually add those together. So I can add my coefficients because they have the same exact square roots, and that gives me 5, and then I have the square root of 6. So sometimes with addition or subtraction, it may look or appear that you can't actually combine them, and that just means that you may have to reduce one or more of the square roots or cube roots that are in front of you. So there's a couple of practice questions you're going to try before our live session, and I will see everybody in a few minutes.